there is a baby watching you right now, not glancing, not peeking, watching, fully locked in, eyes unblinking, face completely still, as if they are studying something that matters enormously to them. You shift in your seat, and their gaze follows. You tilt your head, and they tilt theirs. You look away, and somehow you can still feel them waiting. It's amusing at first, then it becomes slightly unnerving. And if you've ever sat with that feeling long enough, you've probably wondered what, exactly, is happening behind those eyes. The explanation most people reach for is a comfortable one. It goes something like this. Babies are basically half-formed little creatures with limited brains and blurry vision. Faces happen to be the most visually stimulating objects in their environment. High contrast edges, moving parts, noise attached. Of course they stare. It's not profound. It's just the path of least resistance for an underdeveloped visual system looking for something to anchor onto. This explanation feels satisfying because it's modest. It doesn't require us to attribute complex intention or intelligence to a being who can't yet hold their own head up. And for a long time, it was the dominant working assumption in developmental science. Babies stare at faces the same way moths fly toward light, a reflex, a quirk of low-resolution biology. Except the science started coming in, and the science didn't agree. The first crack in the comfortable theory appeared when researchers began tracking not just what babies look at, but when, how long, and under what conditions. Yes, newborns have limited visual range, roughly 8 to 12 inches, conveniently matching the distance from an adult's cradling arms to their face. For the first few weeks of life, the faces are just easier to see. Theory holds up reasonably well. But then something happens around the 3-month mark that the theory can't explain. By 3 months, infant visual acuity has expanded dramatically. A 3-month-old can clearly see objects across an entire room. They can track a moving toy, notice light coming through a window, fix their attention on the family dog pacing across the floor. They are no longer prisoners of limited focal range. The whole visual world has opened up to them. And yet, researchers who introduced a variety of objects and stimuli into an infant's environment at this age consistently found the same result. Given any choice, the baby returned to the face. Not because it was the only thing they could see, not because it was the brightest or the noisiest, but because something about the face was drawing them in at a level that superseded simple visual preference. This is the moment the comfortable theory falls apart. You can't explain preference with biology alone. Preference implies discrimination. It implies evaluation. It implies, at some level, a reason. And that's when the researchers started asking a harder question. Not what are babies looking at, but what are they actually doing when they look? In 2017, a research team at the University of Cambridge published findings that genuinely shook the developmental neuroscience community. Using a technique called functional near-infrared spectroscopy, a method that measures real-time blood flow and neural activity in the brain without requiring subjects to remain still inside a scanner. They were able to monitor brain activity in both infants and adults simultaneously during live, face-to-face interaction. What they were hunting for was something called neural coupling, the degree to which the brainwave patterns of two people begin to mirror each other during communication. This phenomenon had been documented in adults. We know, for instance, that when a skilled storyteller holds a room's attention, the brain activity of the listeners begins to sync with the brain activity of the speaker. The more engaging the communication, the tighter the synchronization. Nobody expected to find this between adults and infants. The assumption was that the developmental gap was simply too large, that a baby's brain was too immature, too unformed, to lock into the patterns of a fully developed adult mind. The data said otherwise. When a baby locks eyes with you, when that mutual gaze fully engages, their brainwave frequencies begin to sync with yours. The same rhythms, the same patterns, firing across two separate skulls at the same moment. The researchers tested every variable. When the adult looked away, the synchronization dropped. When the adult maintained a neutral expression with minimal engagement, there was partial coupling, but mutual eye contact, true, held, reciprocal gaze, produced the strongest neural coupling the team had ever measured between two individuals. Here is what that means, stated plainly. When a baby stares at you, they are not passively receiving visual input. They are actively using your brain as a template to build their own. Your neural activity becomes a scaffold. Your patterns become their patterns. That stare is the mechanism through which a human mind reaches out and teaches another human mind how to be human. But it gets more complex. Because babies don't stare at all faces the same way, and the reason why reveals something even more remarkable about what's happening underneath. Researchers at Harvard Medical School showed 3-month-old infants two faces side by side, a stranger's face and the face of their primary caregiver. The result was counterintuitive. The infants consistently looked longer at the stranger. This seems wrong. Shouldn't they stare more at the person they love, the person they know? The answer is no, and understanding why completely reframes how we think about infant attention. Cognitive scientists call this the violation of expectation response. Infants look longer at things they haven't yet fully processed. The stranger is an open file, unresolved, still being worked through. But the caregiver's face, by 3 months, a baby has already spent hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours, processing every detail of that face, every micro-expression, every shift in muscle tension, every tonal quality that moves across it when emotions change. When they look at you, their person, they are not still learning. They are reading in real time. The precision of that reading is astonishing. Studies at the University of Washington found that by 5 months, infants can reliably distinguish between a genuine smile and a posed one. By 6 months, they engage in what developmental psychologists call social referencing. They look at your face first before deciding how to respond to something unfamiliar in the world. You look frightened, they go still. You look curious, they lean forward. You look relaxed, they feel safe enough to explore. Your face is not decoration in your baby's world. It is their primary instrument for navigating reality. In 1975, Dr. Edward Tronick at Harvard designed an experiment that was, by the standards of developmental psychology at the time, almost shockingly simple. He called it the still face paradigm. Decades later, it remains one of the most replicated and most emotionally confronting studies in the entire field. The setup: a mother and her infant engage in normal, warm, responsive interaction. The baby is attentive, smiling, vocalizing, wholly engaged in the exchange. Then, On a researcher's signal, the mother goes completely expressionless. Her face empties. Eyes open, but nothing moving. No smile, no frown, no response to anything the baby does. What follows in the next 2 minutes is deeply uncomfortable to watch, even on video. The baby notices immediately. They try the things that always work. A big smile, a reaching gesture, a sound. When there's no response, they try harder, larger expressions, more urgent sounds, more insistent pointing. Their entire behavioral repertoire is thrown at the wall, and none of it lands. The mother's face stays blank. Within 90 seconds, most infants begin showing measurable physiological stress responses. Cortisol levels rise, heart rate increases. Some begin to cry with increasing desperation. Others do something that the researchers found even more disturbing. They go flat. They withdraw. They turn their face away and produce the same emotional blankness they are receiving, a kind of learned helplessness that mirrors the mother's stillness. When the mother re-engages, recovery happens, but not instantly. The baby takes time to trust that the responsiveness is real and that it will stay. Dr. Tronick spent 2 decades running variations of this experiment, and his core conclusion never changed. Infants are not passive recipients of care. They are active participants in an ongoing emotional conversation. They are initiating, monitoring, adjusting, responding in real time from the first months of life. That conversation happens primarily through the face, and when the face goes silent, the conversation doesn't just pause, it breaks something. This is why the stare is not just sweet, it is not just charming. It is a genuine act of reaching out, and it requires a response. The longest-term implications of all this research come from work done at MIT's Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences. What they found was that the quantity and quality of face-to-face contingent interaction in the first 6 months of life, meaning interactions where an adult notices the baby's cues and responds to them directly, produces measurable structural differences in the development of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the region of the brain that handles planning, impulse control, emotional regulation, complex decision-making, and sophisticated social behavior. It is, in many ways, the seat of what we mean when we talk about human intelligence in its fullest sense. The architecture of your child's adult mind is being physically constructed, right now, by the quality of your gaze. Every time you hold their eyes, every time you mirror the expression they offer you, every time you respond to what you see in their face rather than letting it pass unacknowledged. You are not simply bonding with your child, you are doing neurological construction work. You are laying foundations that will carry the weight of everything they will think, feel, decide, and become. Now comes the part that matters most practically, and that deserves to be taken seriously without panic. Most babies stare. It is one of the most universal and consistent behaviors in human infancy across every culture, every language, every socioeconomic condition. The drive to seek out faces and lock onto them is deeply wired. But not every baby stares the same way. And there are specific patterns in how a baby engages with faces that experienced pediatric neurologists and developmental specialists consider meaningful early signals. If you notice a baby who consistently avoids eye contact not occasionally, not shyly, but as a clear and repeated pattern that warrants attention, If a baby seems to look through faces rather than at them, if they don't track facial movement the way most infants do, if the reciprocity of gaze that usually emerges naturally by 2 to 3 months is absent or significantly reduced, these are observations worth bringing to a pediatric professional. This is not a cause for immediate alarm. Every child develops along their own timeline, and a single observation on a single day means very little. But the research on early identification and early intervention is unambiguous. The brain's plasticity in the first 2 years of life is never that high again. A child who receives targeted intervention at 6 months achieves outcomes that intervention at 18 months or 2 years cannot fully replicate. The window is not closed after infancy, but it is significantly wider in those first months than it will ever be again. Parents are often the first to sense something, not because they have medical training, but because they have spent more time reading one specific face than any professional ever will. If something about your child's gaze feels different to you, if the reciprocity seems absent, if the tracking seems off, if your attempts to engage are consistently met with nothing, trust that sense. Seek an early opinion. You are not being anxious. You are being attentive. And attentiveness, in this case, is the most valuable thing you can offer. So the next time a baby finds your face across a crowded room and just holds there unblinking, still, deeply focused, you don't have to laugh nervously or wonder what they want. You know what they want. They want you to look back. They want you to be present in a way that goes beyond simply being in the same room. They want the conversation that only faces can have, the one that has no words and doesn't need them, the one that has been running between human beings since long before language existed. 15,000 years of evolution shaped those eyes to be irresistible on purpose. The round face, the wide gaze, the features that pull at something ancient in the adult brain, none of it is accidental. It is a system designed to compel connection, because connection is not optional for human development. It is the mechanism of development. When a baby stares at you, their brain is reaching toward yours. It is asking, in the only language available to it, "Are you there? Do you see me? Can I use you to learn how to be here?" The right answer, the only answer, really is to stare back. If this changed something in how you see the babies in your life, leave a comment. I want to know. Was there a moment when a baby's gaze caught you off guard and held you there longer than you expected? Because now you know what was happening in that moment. And if you want to go further, if you want to understand why babies laugh at empty corners, at nothing, at something in the room that only they seem to see, that's where we're going next. And the science, I promise you, is far stranger than any explanation you've heard before.